Good evening, and welcome back to the Poe Museum. Are you prepared for a chilling, terrifying encounter with history? Well, too bad, because by popular demand, I'm going to be speaking about spoons from the Poe Museum's collection. And that will be the subject of tonight's installment of the Curator's Crypt. On the previous video, I talked about Edgar Allan Poe's soup ladle, a rare surviving relic from Poe's home up in Fordham, and how it made its way to the Poe Museum over the years. I also briefly mentioned that there is a spoon out there in a private collection that purports to be Edgar Allan Poe's spoon that he took with him from the Allan house, his foster parents' house, and kept with him for the rest of his life. And that's not in the Poe Museum collection, unfortunately. But then I did mention that the museum here has a large collection of Poe-adjacent spoons. So a couple of people in the comments wrote that they wanted to see a video about spoons. So that's what we have. And the vast majority of these came from the Mackenzie family, so Poe's sister's foster family. And unlike Edgar with the Allens, who he basically stayed there until he went off to West Point, and then he was estranged from his foster father, and he was on the outs of them. Poe's sister, she remained friendly with her foster family the rest of her life, and Edgar himself was very friendly with her family and was a frequent guest at their house here in Richmond. So some of these spoons could have been spoons that Poe used while he was visiting the house, and many times there it's said that he would spend the night there. They kept a special room for him above the front door at the Mackenzie House Duncan Lodge, and that he would entertain the family with poetry readings, or he would go out hiking in the woods with the sons, or they would play games like leapfrog. He was supposedly an excellent leaper, could leap farther than anyone else. So maybe Poe used some of these spoons. Most of these came by way of Poe's sister's foster mother's great-great-great-grandson. And just a few of the examples here are these little Dimitas spoons. Now, these were what you would use to stir your coffee or your hot chocolate, but Poe would not have. First of all, it looks like it's a slightly later period, and there's a little hallmark on the back here. Now, this isn't the hallmark. This is a little label. When they accessioned it, they put sort of a clear plastic label there. That's going to dissolve and come right off if you use xylene or some other strong solvent, so that's not going to permanently damage it. But that at least shows you that's what it used to look like when it was polished. That's what it looks like now. And down here, the hallmark is for Plymouth Silver Company and dates to about 1897. We do, however, have a lot of these nice spoons in various sizes, and these are much better time period. So these things fit with the kind of spoons that Poe would have used while he was visiting the Mackenzie household. So you got a various grouping of sizes, and we've just got more and more of these. And these also have a silver hallmark on the back, and these ones on the handle have M for Mackenzie, the sister's foster family. On the back you do have the little session label, and you have the silver hallmark there. And this is for Mitchell and Tyler, the silversmiths active in Richmond, Virginia from 1845 until 1866. So that's right in Poe's time period. And these have a much better chance of being ones that Poe would have used while he's at the Mackenzie house. And we've also got slightly smaller size there and an even smaller one here. So some of the smaller ones, you'll see they're all beaten up. And I asked the family that donated them how these get all beaten up like this. And they said that during the Civil War, they were worried that Union soldiers would come in and steal all their stuff and burn down their house. So they said they buried the silver under a wood pile. That's when some of these things got kind of banged up like that. They got a bunch of wood crushing them. So I don't know if that's true or not, but there's a really messed up looking spoon. And why don't we have any forks or knives? They were using forks and knives back then, so forks were even getting more and more popular in the 19th century. And I'm not sure why we ended up with just spoons. It would be nice to have an occasional fork. But according to some people who were around back in the 1920s, one of the Mackenzie family descendants, just anytime somebody asked for some kind of Poe relic, she would just give them one of the forks or give them one of the knives, and they just start giving away everything. So apparently we've got the spoons because she didn't give all the spoons away yet. So that's what those are. And they also had this little piece right here. This is kind of a salt spoon. So maybe Poe would have scooped a little bit of salt with this out of the salt cellar. And this also has a series of little hallmarks there, but very different. This has a British sterling silver standard mark of a lion, which is the duty mark of King George III. And he used it from 1786 until 1821. It's got a K date mark, which indicates 1805, and a silversmith's mark of SM. So that's identifying the silversmith. And nowadays you can look up these hallmarks online. You can find out a lot about when things were produced, where they're produced. It also has on this side, just barely discernible, some lettering, but I'm not quite sure what this says. So I'll let you look really close and see if you can let me know what you think it says on the spoon handle here. That might help us track down who owned this. Was it originally from the Mackenzie family, or did they get it from another family? Let us know down in the comments what you think these letters are. And next up, this is a hog spoon. What's a hog spoon? It's just a spoon. It's a spoon that Poe's uncle Henry Herring won at the state fair for having the best hog. And it came with a group of Poe artifacts in its own special little box here. So this is Henry Herring's hog spoon. And on the handle, you see HH for Henry Herring. And on the back, see the hallmark for S Wedge, which was used by the Baltimore gold and silversmith Simon Wedge, who lived from 1774 to 1823. And he was active from about 1800 to 1823. So this is definitely during Poe's lifetime. I'm not sure Poe would have ever used this because you don't want to let company use your hog spoon, do you? This is like his little hog trophy. And who's Henry Herring? Well, Henry Herring married Poe's father's sister, Elizabeth Poe, not to be confused with his grandmother, Elizabeth Poe, or Edgar's mother, Elizabeth Poe. This is a different Elizabeth Poe. And she had another daughter named Elizabeth, who Eliza Rebecca Herring, who Poe dedicated the poems Elizabeth and To Elizabeth. He wrote them down in her album, not really expecting them at that point to be published. And it said that she resembled Virginia, his wife. She had dark hair, and there were rumors that they might become engaged maybe, but her father was not having it. And even though Poe wrote poetry for one of the other sisters, it just wasn't going to happen with any of the Herring family sisters, but they did stay close to Poe. And unfortunately, Henry Herring didn't really warm up to him that much. Poe would have been living in Baltimore at the same time Henry Herring was. Later, Herring moved to Philadelphia. So Herring and Poe were living in Philadelphia at the same time. But Herring's recalled as saying by one of his descendants, "I didn't want to have anything to do with him when he was alive, I don't have anything to do with him after he's dead. Unfortunately, fate intervened, and Henry Herring eventually moved back to Baltimore, and he became really involved with the Whig Party. They were the rivals of the Democratic Party. The Republicans weren't a thing yet. And in Poe's last visit to Baltimore, he ended up at Ryan's Fourth Ward polls on Election Day. It was a notorious stronghold of the Whig Party. In fact, there were newspaper articles saying, "Beware of the Fourth Ward, the Whigs are up to their old tricks again." So people knew this was a dangerous place to be if you're not a Whig, because they would just grab people, especially people like Poe, who are from out of town that nobody recognized, nobody missed. They'd drug them and use them as repeat voters, just changing their clothes each time. As long as they keep them drugged or drunk, they could make them vote as many times as they needed to, and then just leave them there. Maybe that explains why Poe's wearing somebody else's clothes. And when they found Poe, the guy who found him, Joseph Walker, asked, "Is there anybody you know who can help you? You're pretty rough shape." And he said Joseph Snodgrass, who was an editor and a temperance advocate. Snodgrass came to help Poe. And then about the same time, Snodgrass says Henry Herring showed up. Herring was there. But once again, he didn't help Poe. He just sort of left him there. He must have recognized him. He's lived with him in Baltimore, lived near him in Philadelphia. He'd known him his whole life. The guy had written poetry for his daughters. And Herring just sort of ignored him and left him there. And Snodgrass took him to Henry Herring and said, "Herring, you need to take this guy home. He's in rough shape." And back then, most people, when they got sick, they went home and maybe a doctor would come and visit them. But usually it was left up to your family to care for you. And Herring said, "I don't want him at my house. I don't care what you do with him." So Snodgrass put him on a carriage and sent him to the hospital. And that's why Poe spent his last 4 days in a hospital. He was delirious. He was in and out of consciousness. He was talking to shadows on the wall, not making any sense. And after Poe died, Herring says that he's the one who purchased Poe's coffin. Now, Poe's attending physician, John J. Moran, says he purchased Poe's coffin. So one of them's not telling the truth, or maybe they chipped in and got the coffin together, which I kind of doubt. And we've already discussed kind of what Poe was saying when he was in the hospital, how he's acting. It wasn't making any sense. At one point, he screamed the name Reynolds over and over again. And they've never really conclusively decided who Reynolds was. But by another account, Poe supposedly was shouting "Herring, Herring" over and over again. And I'm not quite buying that one, because who's going to mistake the word Reynolds for Herring? They sound nothing alike, but that's just one of the rumors that maybe people trying to implicate Herring as knowing more than he let on. And Herring never really did fess up or say that he saw Poe at the polling place or said that he had anything to do with what happened to Poe. But maybe he does have a secret. Another Poe relative, Nelson Poe, said he has the full story of what happened to Poe in that final week when he was missing before they found him at the polling place. And one day he's going to write it all down, let the world know. And he never did. So maybe there's some dark family secret about what happened to Poe at that polling place. Maybe Herring knew more than he let on, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a conspiracy theory. As for Eliza, the one that Poe dedicated his poetry to, she later got married. Her first husband died pretty quickly after that. She remarried again to a school principal in Baltimore, and she was one of the very few people to show up at Poe's funeral. And she always sort of cherished his memory, cherished the memory of Poe's wife. And it was her great-great-granddaughter who gave the Poe Museum some of the pieces it has, like Poe's vest and stockings, and our portrait of Henry Herring, which hangs up in the death room. Yeah, we have a whole room dedicated to Poe's death. And at the time of this recording, we're remodeling that room. So that's why Poe's trunk is right here. That's Edgar Allan Poe's trunk that he had with him right up until his final days. And that's going to be on display coming up pretty soon. So thanks for watching for this long. And if you have any idea what those initials on the spoon said, let us know down in the comments. And if you've got an idea for future non-spoon related videos, please let us know down in the comments. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I leave you with more gratuitous footage of the Poe Museum cats doing Poe Museum cat stuff.